Okay, so another video in the series on quadratic equations and factoring. So a vocabulary word here is factoring a quadratic equation. You factor a quadratic equation by finding the terms that you multiply together. So let's look at an example to see what that means. Okay, so here's your quadratic equation, and notice it's got an a squared. It's got a variable squared at the beginning. That's how you know it's a quadratic equation. And we're factoring it, meaning we're breaking it into two things that we're going to multiply together. That's what factors are. They're things that are being multiplied together. Okay, so we're going to use our puzzle box here to break up our quadratic equation. So what number goes to the top of the puzzle box? Well, the number here on the end. The number on the end goes onto the top, and the number in the middle here, plus 8. Goes to plus and the 8. If it was minus 8, it'd be minus 8. If it's plus 8, that goes onto the bottom. Okay, so what two numbers can you multiply together to get to 16 and add together to get to 8? So you may want to think about that a little bit, and we come up with the idea that 4 times 4 is 16, and 4 plus 4 is 8. So what are our two factors? Well, if you have 16 at the top and 8 at the bottom, then you have 4 and 4 on the sides, right? Because it's 4 and plus 4. Okay, so what do you do with the two side numbers? Well, you go right back up here. That's one of your factors, a plus 4. And your other side number is a plus 4. So there's your two factors. A plus 4 times a plus 4 is equal to this quadratic equation here. And if we multiply this together with the distribution box, you'd get this exact quadratic equation. Okay, so you probably want to try some examples right now. Classwork number 1. Just remember that the number that goes to the top of the puzzle box is the number on the end, plus 16. And the number that goes on the bottom of the puzzle box, it's plus 8, the number here in the middle. So try the first one, and I'll pause the video for a second, and then I'll show you the answer to the first one. Okay, if you want to see the answer to the first one, I got 2 and 6, plus 2 and plus 6. Okay, pause the video, do your second one, and then I'll show you the second one. Okay, if you want to see the answer to the second one, I got plus 4 and plus 8. And so if you want to pause the video again, we'll do the next one. Okay, for the third one, I got plus 3 and plus 9. So check your work, see if you got the same thing I got. And if you didn't, you should go back and watch the example number 1 over again and figure out what you were doing wrong. Okay, so for the next one, pause your video. And I got 5 and 9, plus 5 and plus 9. Okay, so let's go on to the next example. Okay, example number 2. Okay, same thing over again. We're going to factor this quadratic into these two factors. Two things being multiplied together to equal to that. Okay, so it's much easier to multiply two factors together than it is to take them back apart. So you got to be a little bit of creative here to take them apart. Okay, so the number on the end, plus 24, that goes to the top. And the number in the middle here, minus 11, that's what goes to the bottom. Okay, so remember to catch your plus signs and your minus signs when you move these over. Okay, so what can you multiply together to get to 24? All the possible things to be 24. Well, there's a bunch of different ways to do it. One of them is 3 times 8. And now notice that the number here on the bottom is a negative number. So you knew, right, you knew that at least one of these side numbers had to be negative. You couldn't have added these two things together to get a negative number. So one of them had to be negative, but the top is positive. So they both had to be negative. That's the only way you're going to get a positive number up here by multiplying two numbers together. Is that both numbers had to be negative. One of them was negative, the other one had to be negative too. So here you get the top 3. Okay, so what if you add these two together? What is a minus 3 and a minus 8? Well, these are both negative numbers. We're adding them together. So you get a much bigger negative number, right? A negative number and even more negative numbers. You put them both together and you get a negative 11. And so there's your two side numbers, a -3 and a -8. So what are your two factors? Well, you get them right off these two side factors. A minus a 3 and a minus an 8. Those are your two factors. And so there it is, right there. You've broke this quadratic, factored it into that two factors. Okay, so here we go again with the classwork problems. Just remember the number on the end goes at the top of the puzzle box, and the number at the bottom of the puzzle box is this number here, right here in the middle. And so do the first one, and then compare it to my answer. I'll pause your video. Okay, so here's my answer. And so check that against your answer, and see what you got. Okay, pause your video and do the second one. Okay, that's what I got. See if you got the same thing I got. And pause your video and we'll do the third one. Okay, what I got for the third one was that. So compare that to your answer. See if you got the same thing I got. And pause your video and we'll do the last one. Okay, I got that. So see if you got the same thing I got. Okay, so let's go on to the next example. And that's right here. So we're going to multiply these two factors together to get that quadratic equation. So we're going to use the quadratic puzzle box to get it out. And the number here at the end of the quadratic equation, it goes on the top. And the number here in the middle of the quadratic equation goes on the bottom. And notice that the order the quadratic equation is always in, it's always the a squared, then in the middle is the a, and at the end it's a constant, something that has no variable at all. Okay, so I'm going to put the minus 32 on the top, and minus 4 on the bottom. And now notice that you have a negative on top. That means that one of these two sides has to be a negative number. And otherwise you couldn't have got a negative over the top. If you multiply two things together, you get a negative. One of them had to be negative. And if they were both negative, you get a positive up there. Okay, so what can you multiply together to get to 32? All the different ways for 32. Well, 4 times 8. 4 times 8 is one of them. And here's a positive, here's a negative. Like I said, one had to be negative. And that does give you 32. But what happens when you add these two numbers together? Do you get to a -4? Well, positive 4, -8. You got more negatives than you got positives. So therefore, -4. And so your two numbers are positive 4 and -8. So I put those back into the two factors. And that gives us the two factors that we had to multiply together to get to this quadratic equation. Okay, so we're going to do another classwork. So just remember, when you do your puzzle box, the number at the end of the quadratic equation goes on the top, the number in the middle of the quadratic equation that goes on the bottom. Okay, so pause the video, do your first one, and I'll show you my answer. Okay, what I got for the first one was right there. So if you want to pause the video, and we'll do the second one. Okay, what I got for the second one was that. So see if you got the same thing I got. And we'll pause your video, and okay, I'll show you the third one. And okay, so pause your video. Okay, so hopefully you worked out the last one, and I'll show you what I got. Okay, hopefully you get the same thing I got. Okay, so that's it for this classwork, and thank you very much for your hard work.